Are we? Oh, okay. Well, let's call to order and welcome board members and guests to the May 26, 2020 Des Moines Park and Recreation Board meeting. Rebecca, would you please call the roll?
Davis.
Here.
Ogle.
Here.
Sayers.
Here.
Bremner.
Here.
Potter.
Here.
Thompson.
Here.
Woodard.
Here.
Ballard.
Here.
Lohmeyer.
Here.
Pugh. Pugh.
Numbers here.
Mute.
Sammy.
Unmute, Sam.
If there was ever one that would be muted.
We're going to try to unmute him here.
Okay. There you go.
Pugh. Sam. Are you present?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Present.
Thank you. Fanter. Here. Am I missing anybody else?
I think, just for my records, Vicky is not here. Vicky Facto, Heather Anderson, and Kim Bogus. Is that it? Is that the ones?
Steve Vilmain.
Bill Main. Okay. All right. Well, we have a quorum, so we can let's move to item number 2, which is approval of the agenda and any discussion of the agenda or any amendments that need to be added to the agenda.
I'll move
the agenda or second.
Okay, we have a move and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the agenda is approved as written. So now we'll move right on to the minutes of the April 28th Park and Recreation Board meeting. Did everyone get a chance to peruse through the minutes?
Yes, we did.
Yes.
At least I did.
I'll move.
To approve.
Second.
Okay, moved in second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Minutes are approved. Okay, let's move right on to board action. And first up, Ben, is Recreation Subcommittee rules.
Well, these next 2 items, there are no changes between the last meeting and today. So we would entertain any additional questions. I think as it's been resolved with the Recreation Subcommittee rules, we've implemented the board's requests. So we're ready to finalize those if the board is ready. This is one item that will not go to the council. You make your own rules for subcommittees, so it stops after this. And the real work, the hard work can begin as formalizing the committee and getting them started sometime in maybe July is what our hopes are.
Do you have an update on participation, Ben?
Matt Kelswich is in charge of that. He just texted me. He's having some technical difficulties. They have a couple folks interested already, but they'll all come to this board like all other subcommittee members. We'll bring them through. Last I heard, I think George was volunteering if nobody else wanted to from the board to be the park board liaison to this group.
I would volunteer.
Great. I know we can take more than one.
What'd you say, Ben?
We can take more than one. Only one member can be the official park board liaison, but you can wear 2 hats.
Okay. All right. Anything else regarding that? We've discussed that through 2 meetings, and we should be. Are there any other questions?
I think George, this will really help us finalize recruitment so we can show everybody the rules that we'll be playing by to make sure they understand how this group will work.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the subcommittee rules for the Recreation Committee.
Second.
Second.
Rebecca, please call the roll.
Davis.
Yes.
Ogle.
Yes.
Sayers.
Yes.
Bremner.
Yes.
Potter.
Yes.
Thompson.
Yes.
Woodard.
Yes.
Ballard.
Yes.
Vilmain.
He's on mute, but he's the 9001 number.
That smells good.
I said yes.
Bill Main,
Yes.
Lohmeyer,
Yes.
Hugh,
Yes.
Fancher.
Yes.
And Recreation Subcommittee rules is passed. Let's go to section B, which is cemetery rules.
Thank you. Same story. The only difference here is being no changes still is that this would go to City Council at their next meeting on June 8th if the board would approve this tonight. Ganesh is here to answer questions, although he might be a little tired. He's still here to answer your questions.
Members, questions for Ganesh regarding cemetery rules?
I have a question just about cemetery maintenance,
Sure.
along with kind of as parallels rules. Are there contractors who are doing the mowing of the cemeteries? Is that,
Correct.
and then what kind of oversight is there for the quality of work and the work that they're doing?
Go ahead, Ganesh.
Well, we create a scope of work that they fall under about length of grass and whatever else and what they have to clean up prior to that work. Having to work around headstones, and we also talk about potential damage to any of our properties, such as trees and heads. There's a whole scope of work. Ron and Mike Gall work to put that scope of work together. When it's competitively bid, we see a number of contractors and we work with them. We do inspections after every mowing cycle, not just on the mowing, but the trimming, and also look at if they've created any ruts, if they've damaged any stones and whatever else. So it's a pretty extensive amount of work that they have to do. We pay a premium. About $400,000 of our cemetery budget is devoted for mowing contract. So it's a pretty big line item that we keep an eye on. That represents about 242 acres of cemetery grounds that are mowed, and other work that we do with them, the trimming.
Thank you.
Yep.
Welcome.
I will tell you just from experience for doing this for 10 years is that it is a low bid system, and sometimes we are having to let somebody prove their own failures. And a good example is Woodland Cemetery. On the next council agenda, we will be going to the next low bidder and terminating the current low bidder just because they couldn't keep up with the scope. To help you understand how closely we watch this, we have a high level of service we expect and demand via the contracts. So they do check this very, very often on a weekly basis. I will tell you one more, tidbit for you to understand cemetery mowing more than you ever wanted to was it's probably one of the more difficult mowings you can do because some of our cemeteries are very old where today's modern equipment doesn't fit in it. And you might see longer grass sometimes too, because what we don't want to do is rut the cemeteries with that heavier equipment that can fit between the aisles, so to speak. So sometimes we will purposely push off a mowing cycle and have them mow it back-to-back cycles within 3 to 5 days, just because we don't want to do long-term permanent damages that are more expensive for our team to fix. Good question.
Ganesh, I had a question. I see the benches are becoming more and more popular in the cemeteries now. I did see someone, I overheard some people talking about a cremation container on the benches. Does that fall under the legality of our system?
Yeah, so what we have the monument companies are able to do a headstone, and they form that in the shape of a memorial bench. Underneath the base of that bench, or where the seat would be, are compartments that would include cremated remains. So it kind of functions as a kind of a mini columbarium.
Mm-hmm.
And that is permitted within our rules.
Okay, but I did want to ask you this now. It's my understanding from the last time that I went off on several questions, but we can have a regular burial and in the same plot, we can have a cremation. So there could be actually two interments there, one being regular and one being a cremation. Okay, now if they had the bench there too, are they also allowed to have others then?
So yeah, the ordinance that was put in place allows for up to four internments in some burial lots.
Okay,
So they would be able to do up to four, and if they choose to do in the memorial bench have four compartments to be able to do that, they can. They cannot use both the bench and an in-ground space to be able to do that because our code basically says up to four on one space.
up to four what?
Up to four burials on one space.
Okay, so a single lot could have up to four. It could have three, theoretically, 3 and 1 also, couldn't it?
Yeah, it could have a full internment and 3 cremated remains.
Okay, so
Oh.
if a person, go ahead, I'm sorry. Joel, anything? Well, if a person had 2 lots, Ganesh, they could in fact have 8, right? If they had 2 lots side by side?
Correct. It all
That
depends
is-
on which block of the cemetery. Every block has a different level of offerings. Not every block, but we have blocks that have only one flush marking, one interment. And then as your price point goes up, you get more offerings and potential of interments. So we do have a wide variety of options, basically.
Very, very much so. Thank you, Ganesh. Any other questions regarding cemetery rules? Now, Ben, is this probably going to be the last time that we see this on the agenda?
Yes, it'll go to the June 8th council meeting for their one-time reading. Since it's not a city code ordinance, it's just rules. Again, this is a long time coming. We really haven't put these rules together in front of the council or a park board for maybe, I think it was almost 30 years, if I remember, Ganesh.
Okay,
1996.
okay. Any other questions regarding cemetery rules? Anyone?
Chair Davis, I propose a motion to accept the rules and regulations for the municipal cemeteries.
Second.
Who was the second on that, Jim?
Yes.
Okay. Rebecca, would you please call the roll?
Davis,
Yes.
Vogel,
Yes.
Sayers,
Yes.
Bremner,
Yes.
Potter,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Woodard,
Yes.
Ballard,
Yes.
Philmaine,
Yes.
Lohmeyer,
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
Fancher.
Yes.
And before you do finalize this, you do have one guest that I can tell on the screen. You might want to just make sure there was no public comments on board action.
Good call. I forgot. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Any comments on that? Anyone? Seeing none or hearing none? We'll move to the next item. And that's a receive and file with the slate of officers. Okay, as you know, we had a nominating committee consisting of myself, Andrea Woodard, and Jim Ballard, and we have term limits in these positions, like everything else in our park board. And so after meeting and I think talking with a lot of people and sending out several emails, and sometimes it's a little hard to get executive board members because in all reality, every park board member is encouraged to attend the executive meeting, which is 7:30 a.m. every the third Wednesday. So based on limits, time limits and stuff, the vice chair, it is recommended that the vice chair be Bill Thompson. The executive board members be Andrea Woodard, Sarah Lohmeyer, and Jim Ballard. Any questions? This is a receive and file item, and officers take roll, I think, in the July 1st meeting. Is that correct? Or the July 1st, the July Park Board meeting?
Correct.
I am correct. So turned out would be Cindy. Cindy turned out and did a great job. My goodness, she was at most of all the meetings and stuff. So we're going to miss you. And after she's off a year, she's able to come back. So any questions? I thought you did great. Thank you. Any questions regarding the slate of officers?
No, Chair.
What'd you say, Joel?
Oh, no, I just said no. No, George. Chair
Okay.
Davis.
Anything else then? Okay, with that in mind, I would like to, we can have a motion to receive and file. Joel, you're on a roll.
So moved.
Second. Second.
Well, motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. Thank you. Next item on the agenda would be a nice report from Ben.
All right, this is where the meeting kind of slows down a little bit, but we'll try to make it succinct and take enough time to answer all of your questions. I'm going to share my screen here and try to pull up a presentation for you. Is everybody seeing the presentation?
Yes.
All right. Well, as much as we work to make this very thoughtful, very detailed, and reviewed by many different inputs, sometimes, as we've all experienced with COVID-19, the information can change within the hour, sometimes the day, and that's exactly what happened to us about 11 o'clock today with the governor's most recent proclamation that released some of the restrictions she had put in place since the beginning of March. I did not change the PowerPoint for the purposes of I sent it to you, but we'll talk about those things because today is a time where you give me your feedback and then I can take the feedback and mold into the final recommendation for our city council. The city council is going to meet June 1st in the morning. I encourage you, if your schedule allows, to tune in, again, like this, remotely. You'll hear from many departments if you're interested in not just Parks and Recreation on different things the city will be doing to reopen in phases. So it's timely for our discussion tonight, and I thank you coming off of a holiday weekend to take an evening meeting and listen about what we will do and how we propose to phase in our reopenings. So without further ado, some of this will be repetitive. We've used this same PowerPoint by design to make sure that we can all follow along and kind of follow this from the beginning. And you'll see, and I'll be faster on slides that have already been presented to you. But at any time, just speak up. I can't see everybody, but I can hear you. So speak up. I'll stop. We'll take that question at that time, and we'll continue to move through the progress of the presentation. Again, I like to say that the CDC is one of the more trustworthy groups out there that we've been using to make decisions and to get information. It's a very conservative group that helps us slow down, pause, and look at everything we do. Again, the CDC's biggest mission is to protect, obviously, the United States and beyond with how we treat this illness, this pandemic. All right, next you'll see, again, that we've also have another layer to think about. We have our own Mayor Frank County's proclamation, his declarations. He's actually made sure that outside of park spaces, but in city spaces, that no gatherings of 10 or beyond on public right-of-way.
Ben,
Yes.
this is Barb. We're seeing your screen, but we're not seeing the slides move.
Okay, I'm glad you said something. They're moving on my screen here, which is always interesting.
So we see the presenter's view.
Yep, but you don't see when I switch it over to,
We haven't.
all right. That is,
I see some boxes that are labeled 1, 2, 3, 4,
Yeah.
5. We would
let me
press
see if I
on
can,
one.
let me see if I can stop sharing here for a second and reshare. All right, let's try this again. I'm glad you told me that wasn't working. All right, share. How's that? Is it one screen now?
Yes.
Yes.
And if I click to the next slide, did it change?
Much better.
All right,
Yes.
we're getting better at this as we go. The CDC Gathering Guidelines, I just hit those at the very beginning of my points is, again, the CDC is one of our very much trustworthy sources of information for all things COVID-19. Again, tonight we're focusing on how we reopen and phase reopenings. You'll hear me say this a lot, that we're using a lot of tools in our toolbox to make decisions. There isn't the one size fits all perfect tool, and we've not been able to even find one data point that is perfect. I don't think you'll ever find that, no matter how hard we all look. All the data out there is subject to debate depending on how it's gathered and who's gathering it and what they test. Obviously, locally here in Iowa, one of the main drivers is what the governor decides as far as her emergency proclamations. She does have control over making those decisions. Some things are allowed to be controlled locally by our mayor, but most things are under her control. That does not mean that just because the mayor or the governor asks us to open right away, we need to do those things. We can have those conversations. I want to make sure as a board you understand that. So what you're about to see is a lot of things coming together from the tools in the toolbox. Again, today there is some new news about how to open different things. That's why there's a yellow highlight. You see yellow in today's presentation. It's only in a few spots. It's because we've made changes from what we sent you on Friday. And there'll be changes between now and this coming Friday when we finalize our representation for the city council. Another great tool that I found that takes all of the potential lobbying and politics out of decision making is our National Recreation and Park Association. It's a member that we're all a part of, including the board. You should be able to get some of these emails if you haven't let Rebecca know. But we actually purchased a agency membership that includes our board. And this is made up of almost, as you can read, 60,000 professionals, 10,000 parks and rec agencies. It's been one of my favorite trusted sources that's updated almost daily with great information on how to reopen, as well as to kind of test your proposed plans of reopening against other cities your size or in your climate or in some of the areas that you've seen have hotter spots like we have in Polk County. I think one of the smartest things we did at the department level was right away in March, we created our own little COVID-19 response team. Myself, Jenny, Ron, Matt, Jen, Rebecca, and then our COVID-19 coordinators, Callie, our volunteer coordinator. Her job changed a little bit and gave her a different capacity during this time while volunteers weren't being used, where she could be our lead researcher focused on finding best practices, finding out what other cities were doing in the metro and beyond. She's been very much invaluable to all of us at this team, doing all the work she's done, putting in many, many, many hours. So if there's one person that's the unsung hero of our team, it's her. Again, I like to remind you, I know that I'm preaching to the choir here, but this is our mission, helping Des Moines live well, play hard, and protect the earth. And we've essentially had to really refocus our mission. We've been designed to bring people together, sometimes most of the time in large groups, to recreate and enjoy public spaces without safe social distancing policies in play. So COVID-19 has very much touched every layer of this department, whether it's cemeteries or it's volunteers, it's recreational programming, it's how we use our parks and trails. So we've had to be very thoughtful and redesign how we deliver our mission. Again, you heard me highlight some of the things that go into some of the decision making. Some of it's untested, obviously, because nobody has been through a pandemic like we're seeing with this. A lot of it, we'd love to say it's 100% data driven, but it's not. It's just because we don't have the experiences with COVID-19 like we've had in other pandemics. And again, the data is subject to debate. So we're trying to take some of those debate features out and make decisions that's based on safety of the public and safety of our staff. That's the two things it boils down to when we make these decisions. Again, the mitigation of the risk of resurgence, and then again, protecting our most vulnerable residents of Des Moines. This is gating criteria, which is data-driven conditions identified by the World Health Organization and the White House COVID-19 Task Force, Centers for Disease Control. Again, indicators. Again, we use these as indicators to tell us it's safe to start moving between what we call our phasing plan. I don't expect you to read all these. It's been emailed to you, but you'll see that, again, more tools in the toolbox. At a certain point, you have so many tools in your toolbox, it becomes so heavy to lift. But it's important for us to at least look into all these things. Then there's considerations. All things alone aren't working together unless you put them into one capacity. Can we meet that gating criteria? Probably not for everything that we do, but it's helpful to make the decision. Again, indicators. Where can we find the best data that shows Polk County, or even drilling down to Des Moines, the city of Des Moines proper, is the trajectory moving down and consistently down? And where do we have the staff capacity to do new things that will require us maybe additional sanitation? Also, do we have critical partners like our human resources department? When we talk about pools later on in this PowerPoint, you'll see that they're a critical partner. Can they produce the staff that we need and get them through all the checkpoints, through the background checks, the medical checks, and can we have them in capacity when we want to reopen? Can we meet all the cleaning and disinfection of all of our touch points and safety surfaces? Do we access all the PPE, all the different things? And then lastly, not the main tool, but budget is always in the background. We've had huge budget concerns. We're north of $250,000 already in reduced revenue, and we have additional expenses we wouldn't have had we had a normal operations right now. So our challenge was to find a way to phase our reopening through all of our different services. You can see I've talked about a lot of different things that went into those discussions and then into these proposals, including hours of operations being affected, and how do we communicate to the public that things are going to be done in the safest way that we can deliver them, and how are we going to assess where we decide to go from group activities down to single-use activities. So without further ado, you've seen this slide. I'll be brief on these entry slides. A normal pool season would have been this past weekend through August 16th. We're talking about the 5 big pools. Today, the governor did release as one of her restrictions that pools can open, but only, and it's her power only, to allow swim lessons right now, and lap swim, and small group fitness, aquatic type fitness classes. One thing that we're still looking into is swim teams, because there's other language in today's proclamation that allow team sports that we believe might be the case. I can't tell you today. It needs a few more days to see after today's news. Could swim meets happen? And if they could, how do we do that to keep them safe? Now, what you're seeing for the first time today in this meeting, I know you saw the PowerPoint before the meeting, is 1 through 5 phasing. This phasing came from the National Recreation and Park Association as a preferred way for parks and recreation departments to move between phases. There's more that goes into it than what we have in the slide. We've had to narrow the slides down so you could read them. So as of June 15th, we believe now, actually for pools, if the city council and this board desires, we can offer swim lessons and lap swim and small fitness classes as soon as, and it'll be a push, but as soon as June 22nd. And you might ask yourself, why that long out if you think that we should go and do pools sessions like that? It's because it takes time to fill pools. It takes time to onboard staff and do safety training with staff. It takes time to recruit participants to participate for those swim lessons and lap swim. The public will want to know what levels of safety we'll go to. We'll spell all those things out when we've been thinking of those things. So we are planning, like most cities in Iowa, to offer swim lessons sometime between, you follow your cheat sheet that I provided you, June 22nd through 7/1. It's probably more likely that we'd be ready to rock on 7/1 to offer that. I do believe, and it is my recommendation, that we do offer those swim lessons, because I believe that our demographic is ever changing. But one thing that I know for sure is we have new immigrants moving to our community on a daily basis, and there's not a fear of our rivers like there should be. And without a place to train this critical life skill, I think we would subject our community to potential drownings. So this would be an outlet to help educate those folks. Again, we would continue our normal pricing as well as our new $5 strategy, that anybody that meets the low-income guidelines of our program, we're able to participate for $5. I'll pause. Questions on pool operations?
How long would it take to move to, or what, I guess I should ask you, how long do you think it will be until we move to phase 5?
A lot of that will be subject to the social distancing the governor decides on and crowd sizes. Today, again, I would go back and use the CDC as a good indicator for that answer, Joel. CDC right now is telling us that they will require for this summer, they can't require, excuse me, they provide guidance because they're the CDC. They would provide guidance asking all pool operators, whether it's municipal or private, to have a policy that says you would still maintain that 6-foot social distancing if you opened your pools to an open swim. That's just not practical. As you know, we would not have much enforcement behind that. We'd find ourselves trying to find off-duty police officers and swimsuits for them. It's just something that we don't think we can deliver safely or enforce. I don't see it happening this year in my crystal ball, talking to my colleagues, not only in Iowa, but in Chicago and Minneapolis and Omaha. Trust me, our team did not want to give up on that, but I just don't see a way we can do it safely for staff or the public.
With this different focus, would you be able to offer more swimming lessons? Because I really agree that it's a critical life skill, and in particular to our underserved populations here. So
Great question. So we have targeted 2 pools. We need a deep well pool for some of the lessons as the older kids progress through the different levels, and we need one of the 0 depth newer pools. So we targeted Birdland as our deep well pool. It's an almost, if you could find the most centrally located of our pools, it's Birdland. And we targeted Teach Out as the other pool. We believe we can get close to almost 600 lessons, and we would be ready, should enough demand be ready, to open a 3rd pool. It would just take a matter of a few weeks, but we would know that answer well before that time. But as soon as we can put the word out after this June 1st meeting with the city council, and after we get your feedback as a board too, we can begin to test the supply and demand theory, if you will, on this.
I've got another question. Is there any kind of coordination with the private pools, more specifically, like the YMCA or other private entities that operate pools and the municipalities?
At this point in time, we really haven't been able to coordinate. I think that the YMCAs are in a much more difficult financial outlook than we are, because they're driven by membership dollars to operate. Sometimes it's you're thankful to be in a city budget where you do have the ability to be subsidized. Sometimes that's also very difficult too. Right now, the conversations I've had with our elected leaders one by one on some of these things have been that they are really supportive of this action, and they're not looking at this as a bottom line dollar decision. They're looking at your advice as the board, my advice as what I'm seeing across the metro. I can tell you, I know that a lot of our metro communities are planning on offering at a bare minimum swim lessons and lap swim.
As I see around the metro area, different swim pools. The example would be West Moines and other places. I think the protocol is swim lessons only, and and I do agree with you, Barb, that that's very, very important, and I really appreciate the efforts you're doing there on the swim lessons only. As far as where we get to level 5, Joel, and I'm just speaking from what I'm reading, is by the time we get to level 5, will in fact the swimming season be coming to a close? At that time, let's say you get to level 5, and let's say it's mid-July. Where do you get the personnel, the lifeguard personnel, to fill in and things like that? I think that we're on a very, very tight string on this, and I think if we were to just back this swim lesson model, I think we'd be far ahead in the community.
Yeah,
Martin, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, those are good comments, George. I didn't mean to step over those. I just wanted to try to be as succinct as possible. You're absolutely right. We will struggle to find lifeguards. In fact, they're already starting to peel off to find other work that's now opening up. Also, Hart, I do not speak for Tom, but I will tell you that They have their hands full deciding on what their school session looks like. One scenario, again, this is not a decision he has made, but one scenario that we have to be ready for is school starts sooner, which means the pool season would be shorter too if there was a pool season. That's why our recommendation, if you put all those inputs into it, has been swim lessons only, lap swims. I know it's disappointing. And by the way, it's disappointing for our team too. We love nothing more than to have the fun pool seasons that everybody's accustomed to doing for all these years. We know it's going to disappoint a lot of people. If we really had control and there was a safe way that was practical to do this, we would absolutely be on board to do it.
You still plan on filling the pools for a time because of maintenance, so the seals don't dry out on in the
Yes.
mechanical rooms, right?
There's a lot of logistics, so we'll have to do some outward public education on our social media channels and with the media. Like if they saw one of the two pools that weren't going to offer swim lessons, why they were being filled up for a week, because you have to exercise those expensive facilities that sit all year long and only run for 3 months. You know, valves and heaters and everything else. You need to know what's going to work. So that way next year, let's all presume we're on a really good spot. Next year, this all opens up like we've normally seen pool operations. We're ready to go. Okay, I'm going to keep moving. I'm not hearing anything, so I'm going to keep moving to the next slide. Okay, this is where it gets to be really soul crushing and disheartening. So prepare yourself. It's hard on all of us, including our team. Spray grounds, if you look at your cheat sheet I provided you, the next 3 aquatic features will not open for the year, and I'll explain why. Again, not because we don't want to. It's out of safety, it's out of management issues, it's out of social distancing and crowd sizes. Our spray grounds are very, very popular. We all know that. You're now up to 11 of these destinations. And our issue is this, they're not fenced in. With pools being limited to swim lessons, people are going to want to go to a place to cool off and then get out of the heat. We understand that. It makes 100% common sense to us as well. But remember, spray grounds have 0 staff, nor would we be able to find staff, I don't think, to sit there and police it like you might see some of the new rules for restaurants, bars at a 50% capacity. What is that? And then who could really stop a crowd of 100 more? And it's not uncommon to see at spray grounds on a nice day, 60 to 100, depending on which one it is. So we have decided that spray grounds, and you'll see the next 2 slides, would be closed for the season. Unless something dramatically changed where we eradicated the COVID-19, which I don't think any of us believe is going to happen between now and August 1st. That would also include the 4 large pools. Again, they're not fenced in. There's not a way for us to patrol, nor do we have the commitment from our police officers. They could resource this to help us manage one in, one out when we got to a certain number.
Does this follow the national organization advice as well? Or how does this parallel that?
So really, there hasn't been specific advice on water play features at this point in time. They've focused their attention to the big pools. So what I can tell you, what it does follow is most of the metro and our larger cities in the Midwest, like Chicago, Minneapolis, as well as Omaha. That can change. A lot of these decisions, we're not saying 100%, but we're saying 99.9% sure. Been doing this long enough to know you don't 100% paint yourself in a corner. You leave yourself an out. But again, my worries is the practicality of protecting not only the staff members that are at 2 of those 3 facilities. Spray grounds does not have staff, but controlling crowd sizes and maintaining that social distancing. If you look at today's governor's proclamation, the things that she did not open back up were related to gathering of crowd sizes still.
No.
One more question about the splash pads and the sweating pools. Those, I'm assuming that just because of the scale of them, they'd be easier to implement if there is a change, for example, mid-July, August 1. So there's potential to initially have them closed, but then open them?
Yes, I would say that we would probably err to the side, well, it wouldn't be probably, we would err to the side of the spray grounds, because I think the time we get to mid-July, for example, you'd have to pick the only one that's not staff driven, which is our spray grounds. They require no staff. The other ones do because of state of Iowa public health rules on depth of water they hold. But yes, we would have that opportunity to discuss that as a group again and look at the community demand to see if there's a way to do that safely. Tell me if I'm going too fast, everybody. That's the beauty of not being able to have a face-to-face conversation. Our only futsal court is closed through 6/15. That means that we plan on opening it up on 6/16, excuse me. And again, you'll see us kind of walk through a level. The first level you'll see will be no recreational tournaments, but only open recreational play. So no spectators, no tournaments, which has already been demanded. There's already a demand for that. We've told them we don't see that until probably 1st of July. We'll reevaluate that. We'll take it about 2 weeks. And you'll see me say that a lot throughout the presentation. The things that are open, we're going to assess and watch the data come through and see if we're still on a downward trajectory in Polk County. A lot of what we do is based on gathering sizes and those restrictions that are currently in play by the governor and the mayor and our CDC guidance. The Birdland Marina did open. You can see it opened on 5/12. Normally it would open around April 1st and go through October 31st. We sent out and we copied the board on some of the restrictions. Each and every one of these, after we get through the city council, will have what the rules are, no matter what the topic is. But this is a good example to talk and just pause for a little bit. Today, a lot of time people bring their boat and they go back to the marina and they enjoy food and beverage on their boat when they're done. We're not allowing that. We're asking people right now to, enjoy your boats, take them for your cruise, and cruise only with quarantine family members. To give you a couple examples, today's presentation isn't meant to list all the examples, but we will then move through the phases. I do see with the marina that we would be moving again 6/15. We would remove a few more restrictions. Maybe we would allow them to hang out in the marina a little longer should there not be large gathering sizes in there, because the marina could be looked at like a 50% occupancy rate, which we don't have a number for what the occupancy would be. We're trying to figure those things out. Although cemeteries really never closed, they were restricted, and those restrictions continue. Right now, our office is open. We encourage appointments. If you show up and then somebody already has an appointment, we ask you to stay in your car and we'll come and get you at the next available point, or we'll give you an appointment. Operations obviously have to keep going, so our team is working in smaller size groups. They are 1 to a vehicle or 1 to a utility vehicle. The governor still has not stopped or released the restrictions on funeral gatherings that I saw today. That continues. We've again also canceled all of our historic walks through June 15th. You can see that we have modified operations with increased cleaning and increased separation protocols for our staff. And you can see how we will slowly trend through those phases for cemetery operations. All right, here's one that you'll see, the community recreation centers. Of the 2 that we maintain today and own and operate, 4 Mile is closed. You should all have a memo about a week or 2 old now in your inbox if you haven't had a chance to get to that. The good news is it's under major renovations for major improvements on the interior. That will go through August. So we're talking today mostly about Pioneer Columbus Community Recreation Center. We do have a partner there, which is the county that provides the meal sites. They're a trusted partner that will follow all the guidance that's out there. So once they have a plan, we will vet their plan with them and they will begin their meal sites when that's ready. I don't envision that happening real soon because that's one of the more vulnerable populations with COVID-19. But we do know what our building sizes is. This is one of the easier ones to do. You've seen, maybe you belong to a private gym. Many of the gyms that are privately operated in the Des Moines area are open. I do, so I've checked one of mine out. We will reduce the population by fire code to 50% as the governor calls for. We will limit and close off machines that are too close to each other or space them out throughout the facility. And we will only allow activities that are going to lend themselves to safe social distancing. We also look at our staff safety. So the city facilities, which is a division of the city manager's office, has been putting into a play with all city buildings There'll be things like sneeze guards when you show up and stickers on the floor where to wait if we're at capacity. Plan on a limited opening of Pioneer Columbus to test that, and I'm sure we will learn some lessons as we go, but we'll do it in a safe way that protects our staff and the patrons. I also don't want you to be confused. We made a commitment for the June 2nd primary. It's a voting location. The building will open on June 2nd for Pioneer Columbus. The county has tested their protocols, how they will do that. They'll only have access to the lower half where one of the gymnasiums, the small gymnasium is, where they'll spread out their voting machines. And that's important. The schools are doing the same thing. I just don't want you to be confused if you hear from a friend or a neighbor that they were able to go into Pioneer Columbus on June 2nd. That's a one-day only limited offering to make sure we can offer public voting venues. We do have private concessionaires, 2 examples. Captain Roy's is opening. All we were doing here is making sure they're following their current contract agreements with the city.
Parks Director Ben Page.
Yes. Yep. Is there a question, Joel?
Sorry, I thought I was muted.
Oh, okay. Sorry. The concessionaires then have to come up with their plan that I will vet. And as long as they're meeting the required Iowa Department of Public Health current rules related to COVID-19 operations and our local rules and the governor's overlay of proclamation, are allowed to open. So right now, as you know, Captain Roy's is open. They've met that test with limited offerings. What they've done is they've removed outdoor patios. The interior of their building is not open. They're not allowing anybody to come in. They're only opening their front counter that's open from the outside. All right. One of our programs is at least going. It's kind of fun to think about some recreational program that can happen. Evelyn K. Davis is one of those programs that's privately funded with donor money, has been since its inception in 2006. We've made some really good headway with our partners, Des Moines Public Schools, Urban Dreams, the Rub YMCA. There's so many partners, I couldn't list them all. We've decided to do to-go programming that includes educational things like in a backpack, healthy food to go home to the families, as well as healthy recreational opportunities like a workout plan, a jump rope. We're working towards the idea of a Fitbit for them to track their steps. Things will obviously rotate through the phases again here. We're in phase 2 as we speak. We may be able to be by June 15th or July 1 into phase 3, I envision, into small groups where we'd space out at the park with seasonal staff, and some of our staff that were furloughed from 4 Mile Community Recreation Center will come back to work and help here. Again, as long as it can be done within the safety guidelines of safe social distancing and gathering sizes. The governor also closed all skating rinks and skate parks through 6/15. We have one today that's currently constructed and open. It'll open on 6/16, and it'll be there'll be signage on site that says there'll be 10 people allowed to use a feature at one time. We'll ask them to self-police, but I'll also remind you, we do have the summer police program patrol that you'll see at the last slide. They have been out. They have broken up games of contact play and helped move people on when there was too big of crowds. This will be added to the list. So between safety messaging as well as the police, we're in phase 2 here, and we'll ask folks to only use it 10 at a time and wait within the distance or the perimeter of the skate park, and as one person leaves to share equally and join in. I know that sounds like it might be a recipe for conflict, but we're going to have to give it a try and see how that goes. Okay, I'm going to move on.
I've got one question, Ben. Could we give that policy a try with the wading pools?
We think that the wading pools just might be a recipe for disaster because of the heat, and they're already very popular today. Whereas the skate park has been pretty much managed in a way where folks have not seen that type of use. They've seen the 10 to 50, where we were seeing the spray grounds, so the 50 to 100 plus. And the spray grounds too, I want to remind this group that spray grounds are not chemically treated water. That's the one that's just straight Des Moines Waterworks water coming out of that pipe. If there's a way to get there at some point, Joe, I give you, you've got my commitment. We'll try to get to that point at some point this year. I just want to see how this evolves.
Sure. Thank you.
Yep, no, I think that's a fair question. The greenhouse, another difficult staff area that we've been making work. It was never designed to be just staff with the 1 3/4 time employees that we have. But we found unique ways to continue on all of our programs. I'll highlight the neighborhood flower program. We found a way to deliver all the neighborhood flowers by an appointment time. We've used some of the staff that has been redeployed from other areas, like pool operations that aren't opening at this point, to help out. I will tell you that we are going to slowly begin using volunteers there when it's safe. And again, I remind you, they'll know before they volunteer what the requirements are, and we'll provide any PPE like we would for our own staff. We'll test it obviously with 1, 2, maybe 3, no more than that, to keep the space safe, social distancing, and we'll make sure that they understand it's just a volunteer. They don't have to do it if they don't feel comfortable. We'll put a call out. We will need help at a certain point. I don't envision that until probably sometime, between 6:15 and 7:01, where we'll start to slowly introduce 1, maybe 2 volunteers to help us keep up. And then as we progress through summer, maybe we get to a little bit larger sizes, but nothing real large, as you can see. Grays Lake, another popular discussion item on our social media today. It's open, just not the parking lot, the restrooms, the road, and the beach will be closed. I'll get into this for swimming in 2020. I'll explain more in a second. As you can see, I'll break this down for you. We will open up the concession operations here right after June 1st, but probably around June 15th, like city buildings. There's a way to do that. And I want to remind you, it's not really about the concession business. It's more about the watercraft rental business. That's a perfect way to get safe social distancing on a 99-acre lake. We can do it in a safe manner where we can sanitize the equipment as it comes in and goes back out. You can give them great direction on how to use different parts of the lake. But we will still sell packaged foods, packaged drinks, and packaged candy bar, chips, things like that. Things that don't need staff touch points to prepare. 6:15 is when I see us getting into, 6:16 is when I see us entering phase 2, and we're preparing for that right now, staffing up. Any questions on concessions before I move into the other parts of the park? Okay. Again, depressing to even talk about the beach being closed, but today, the beach would be a very popular destination, and it's always been a difficult thing to manage. With no pool, open swim, we know it would be a magnet to cool off. We're not saying you can't sit on the beach and enjoy the beach and enjoy the sun. We're saying that we would not, and we would sign it that you cannot use it to swim in the water. We have no lifeguards on duty. That's always been the decision. That's because we believe lifeguards give a false sense of security. Unlike a pool, you can't see the floor of the lake, and the water quality is what it is. It's not crystal clear water like you see at our pool operations. With that many potential people next to each other, shoulder to shoulder, I believe it's a recipe for disaster. We've experienced enough drownings at Grays Lake. It'll be difficult to manage, but I want to remind you that Grays Lake is one of the few parks that has a significant police presence dedicated to it year-round during the 7 months of the hottest part of the summer. Hottest part of the park season. I do think that we're able to open the road and the parking lot sometime between 6:15 and 7:01. Obviously, there's a lot of demand to get that reopened because of the popularity of Grays Lake.
Between 6:15 and 7:01 is when you're going to reopen the parking lot?
Absolutely. It will not be any sooner than 6:15. There just happens to be a little construction project that our sewer company is doing on the beach that connects the restrooms to a major sewer line that's being repaired for the entire city. But I can envision around 6:16, if the downward trajectory is happening like we believe it will, we can slowly open up the park again. There's not a slow way to do it. It's either all open or all closed.
Right.
I've got a couple questions, Ben. Do you think that the no opening the beach but no swimming is going to be problematic? And number two, what about fishing? I know with the lot closed, the people that want to take a boat and fish at Grays Lake are restricted. Do you see that being held up until June 15th also?
I'll take the easier question first. So the fishing will be opening on 6/15 for folks that have their own access to their own watercraft of any sorts that are allowed at Gray's Lake. So that, and then fishing can happen today still. Again, you'd have to park somewhere in the vicinity to carry it. But on 6/15, you'll be a lot easier to fish. The beach, I absolutely believe it'll be a very difficult enforcement tool for our police department. But I believe that from a liability and risk management standpoint, I don't know how we say that the beach is open this year because of the crowds that we're going to see. I just, again, perusing the local news, the national news over the holiday weekend of Memorial Day, we saw what some of the large beaches on oceans has done. Thankfully, we do have that Des Moines police presence there to help us out. I've also talked to the only comparable park that we have in the state of Iowa, which is our neighbor West Des Moines, Raccoon River Beach. Their director is going to do the same thing. So we'll have a consistent message, and that way it looks like the cities are working together to make sure we're trying to look at the safety of our users.
Excellent. Thank you, sir.
Those are all great questions. Again, these are such a depressing topics to talk about because we're designed to open and have fun for everybody. And at the end of the day, I'm going to err to the side of caution.
I appreciate all the reasons for all the constraints, and I just was wondering, earlier when we talked about swim lessons, you'd mentioned how there are populations, there are people who don't understand the dangers of our rivers. And what came to mind is that really those are going to be that's the alternative. So is there going to be any extra messaging, extra resources dedicated to messaging how dangerous our rivers are and that they're really not for swimming?
Absolutely. Listening into the call tonight is our communications guru, expert, Jen Fletcher. She and I've had this discussion. It's not a perfect scenario, but what we'll do is we'll work with the Iowa Department of Natural Resources on not just boat safety and swim lesson safety and watercraft safety. We'll do continuing social messaging. We'll work with our neighborhood associations. As you know, we have a designee of all of our staff, and we'll really push that $5 swim lessons. And I want everybody to know that if somebody calls us or contact us in any manner, they can't afford the $5 swim lesson. We're going to make it work either way. We just like that $5 number because we believe it. They're taking up a spot, and there's going to be limited spots potentially. So we want them to have a little skin in the game. But if they can convince us, which won't take much at all, that they'll show up, we'll figure a way through the Friends of Des Moines Parks. They've always been great about picking up that $5 to help us. But yes, we will push social media messaging throughout as much as possible, and we'll do local grassroots efforts with the neighborhood associations, and we'll work with the Des Moines Public Schools. And lastly, we've got a 30,000 member active database, which is our third-party company that we use park reservations and program registration software. So we'll do the newsletters we always do. We'll do our emails. We'll do everything we can within the powers that we have to put out the safety messaging.
Ben, is Polk County going to close Easter Beach?
You know, I haven't heard, but I've asked their opinion on that. I know they're going to continue to do watercraft, and they're also going to push the safety messaging of waterways.
Okay.
Yeah. As you all know, it's going to be an enforcement issue, and we're going to have to do our best to enforce and do positive enforcement message. We're not here to be the negative police. We're here to make sure we can try to convey why this is going to happen.
Yeah, as you know, they started watercraft rental last weekend.
Yes. You know, part of our timing, and I think you're all understanding this, is we wanted to message the city's opening in a really condensed but equal manner, where we didn't feel it was the right message to say you can go and start using the community recreation center tomorrow, but you can't walk into City Hall to look the mayor face to face. We wanted to make sure it was timed the right way for the overall city picture, not just the parks and recreation picture. All right. And by the way, we can go back to any of these slides when we're done. You just tell me. Today, outdoor venues gave some new information by the governor's proclamation. I do see a scenario where we could allow weddings in phase 2, and that could be as early as June 15th to that 7/1 magical date again. It would have to be 50% of a venue size. The difficulty for me and our team is we can tell you what we know today the capacity is in seats, but as you know, when we have events, people don't always sit in the seats. They sit around, stand around. So we might just have to arbitrarily pick a low number and say, hey, if you want to have a venue for a wedding, maybe it's 100 people at Sylvan Theater, because we know that holds much more than 100, more than 3 times 100. So we'll work with folks. We'll start to put those rules together over the next couple of days and see what that can look like with a scaled opening to where we could be in phase 2 as early as 6/15. Drinking fountains, restrooms, and portable restrooms are right now going to stay closed. They're one of those that I really don't have a good judge on right now, and that's purely due to 2 things. I'm waiting for the city manager to respond to the staffing needs it will take to do additional sanitation. And I've proposed using some of the pool staff that won't open pools this year to do some of that work, but I need to hear back from him how that will work. Also, supply and demand for that sanitizing chemical. If you look at the private sector, I know, for example, health clubs have not opened their drinking fountains, but they've opened their restrooms. So we're going to look at what the Metro is doing, what the CDC is going to give us guidance on, and to look at what we can do with the staff resource we have today. I hope to have a better answer in the weeks to come on that. That's just the one tricky one I haven't been able to pinpoint a time point on that. Playgrounds. Today, the governor opened playgrounds, so that threw us a little bit of a curveball. But I will tell you that the CDC is about a week ago already provided guidance that playgrounds do not need to be sanitized. UV light is what they believe is the best to do for playgrounds. So we are now going to modify this slide. This is already an outdated slide because of that. I had a conversation with the city manager right before I picked up this call. We will look at opening playgrounds on 6/1 with some messaging that goes out that talks about gathering sizes, and to ask parents and other guides that are with young children to tell them that if you come here and you see more than 10 people, that maybe come back later or pick a different park. So playgrounds will open 6/1 is our staff recommendation. We'll hear it right after the council and right after this meeting what you all think about that. Any questions, concerns on that? That seems to be what my colleagues are talking about late this afternoon in the suburbs as well. Okay, recreation programs. We've postponed everything through 6/15, but we'll start to unwind that. We'll look at everything that we do, and we'll look at it at group sizes, and we'll look at how do we sanitize things. An example of this would be our stand-up paddleboarding with Joel is very popular, and used to have a larger size because we had enough inventory, but now we'll look at decreasing the participant totals based upon pre-registration, and we'll do more classes with smaller group sizes. We'll look at all the things we look at like that. That'll be how we decide on how programs get implemented moving forward. Again, it'll be a size gathering with staff safety, participant staff safety in mind, and additional sanitation in mind. Shelters will now be able to be rented again after 6/15. Each one of our enclosed shelters, like you see here is McCray Park, has a fire code that's rated like most buildings and restaurants are. So if this building was 50 people, for example, we would remove some of the tables and it would be now only for 25. We would ask the renter to help us police that. We just aren't in the business to police that. And we would hope by taking some of the tables out, that's the way to do that. And it would get, again, clean between every rental like they do today. They would just get an additional layer of cleaning, additional sanitation. As you see that, again, as we get less restrictions from guidance from all the different inputs, larger sizes can start to come back. Same thing for open air shelters. They'll be able to be used again. Again, we'll remove this picture. You can see there's lots of tables there. So tables will be pulled out to different parts of the park, and they might get pulled back in, but that's the best way to do this at this point in time and to kind of see and test this to see how it goes. You'll see again, it's based on gathering sizes and keeping safe social distancing. Special events is a difficult one, but we're finding unique and creative ways to reprogram special events. A good example of this will be one of our most attended longest lasting special events that happens in the summertime is yoga in the park at Grays Lake. So we've met with our yoga volunteers that do the instruction, and we are going to pre-tape some of these and play them live on our social media to say, hey, it's yoga day. It's although you're not able to come to Grays Lake, you can still do it from home at one of our parks or public spaces, and we'll do it like that. Another good example is, maybe moving some of our free flicks to some of our larger parking lots like county soccer and doing a ticketed, advanced ticketed promotion where you can only allow so many vehicles in where we can get safe social distancing. The governor gave, funny enough, guidance on drive-in type movie theater experiences. So we need to really dive into those rules a little deeper the next couple of days to see what we can and can't do.
So will you look at doing another drive-in one like we did a couple of years ago, Ben?
Yeah, I think so, Jim. That's the goal, is to maybe use county soccer. It's the only park that has a big enough parking lot that has some separation, better than most for neighborhoods. And I think there's a way to do this. Our team's looking at it right now. Obviously, it's not as fun to not have it in your backyard if you're a neighborhood park person, but it's a way to do this to try to balance throughout the city. We'll look at all of our parking lots. I'd use county as a good example. Again, special events are designed to bring large groups together, so we'll have to look at virtual programming for a while here. Our sports courts stayed open, as you recall, but we banned contact play. Today, the governor released sports for recreation and specifically called out that the only place I could find, there might be others, but it was a 32-page document that we had to digest quickly today, that recreational sports for youth and adults that are non-school sanctioned sports can have less than 6 foot social distancing and touch points. Spectators cannot, participants can. So we're going to look at all of our sporting programming as well as our courts. Like you saw, we'll probably again now open basketball games as well as softball. I'll get to those slides, but we have courts today that are out there that are for public use. I see us 6:15 I'm sorry, I see all sports and athletic venues 6:08 to 6:15 opening. That's a change from when I sent this out on your chart, which will be updated before Friday for you. Again, for the same reasons we just discussed, I want the board to recall that our youth complexes are not programmed by our team. They're venues that are rented by third parties. There is a lot of great guidance out there between the NCAA, the National High School unions have provided rules for sanctioned high school play. Great tools for our team. We've already been looking at those. We'll then put a certain benchmark, high water mark point out, and will allow folks to meet or exceed those modifications and separation guidelines. I see the ability to start as early as 6:08 or as late as 6:15 for third parties that can meet those separation guidelines and rules. Spectators will still have to sit 6 feet distance and only close by people they're quarantining with. I see us in phase 2, but on 6:08 to 6:15, subject to your thoughts and our council's thoughts, moving into phase 3. Same for the soccer park. I want to go back. I'm sorry. The only real difference for us would be on the Greater Des Moines Softball Park. That's the one that we do program with adults. There is occasional youth tournaments held there, again, by the private sector, but we do program adult softball. And since the governor's newest restrictions would allow, again, with the right protocols in place, we will also allow and give that a test. You've almost made it to the end, so thank you for your patience. This is just a reminder of what we've already canceled, things that had to cancel through a certain point. Today's governor rules, again, will allow us to open up field rentals as early as 6/8, so not any longer going to cancel through mid-July for field practice space for youth and adults. But pickleball and futsal, those programs are already done for the year, so those won't be returning from our perspective. Again, you can see some things that we'll have to reevaluate with our new rules. I've highlighted how athletics will work. Trails are open, but remind everybody, trail events, these are mostly all these fundraisers that are fun walks and runs and rides. Those are closed through 6/15, and those are gathering sizes, again, by third parties, much like the athletic venues. If they can propose how they would patrol and keep good spacing between those participants, we would entertain that. This is one of the areas I don't know how that would work at this point in time. I don't see it working, nor do I see a huge demand from the private sector. I don't think they would see enough participation to make their fundraiser work at this point in time. Maybe by July 1st, rules, but we'll keep that open. Again, the phasing.
We're getting an echo from somebody.
Yeah, I can hear that. Dang it. Volunteers. You'll see that we're going to limit volunteers still, but we're slowly, and we've already introduced them. They helped greatly during our cemetery operations this past weekend by safely in small individual sizes or small quarantine families placing our flags throughout our cemeteries, which I think is a great touch, and it really made a difference, I believe. Again, you remind yourself that these folks will know the rules before they sign up. We'll show them the rules of how we're going to take care of not only them, but our staff they might be in the vicinity of, but again, safe social distancing. That slowly gets unraveled like everything else, where eventually at a certain point with certain rules in play, larger sizes can come back and do larger volunteer type events. I think it's fun to end on what's open and remind everybody the extreme uses we're seeing at the beginning of this meeting. I know, Lloyd, you'd mentioned how much you saw on the trail traffic this weekend. We're seeing off the charts use still. You can measure that in a lot of different ways, from cell phone GPS pings to how fast the trash receptacles are being filled over the weekend, or the old eyeball test by driving by and seeing this. But our cemeteries are still open, the Birdland Marina, our parks, our trails, the dog parks, and the community gardens is a really important one. That can be done safely as well. And it's something that we shouldn't overshadow. Folks still need access to low-cost foods, and we provide a unique but critical service there as well for folks to allow to feed themselves through their community gardens. You've heard me mention a few times the police have been an invaluable partner in all this. They've been doing great work. I get police reports every morning. They're all over the city. We direct their work. They also know where to go. They're doing a nice job helping us educate the public. They're taking the way of a positive enforcement, unless they have to, be the hard police officer approach. They use that last. For the most part, it's been just educating the public that they need to practice safe social distancing. I'll continue through our division manager and myself to educate the police on the newer rules, should they all be approved by this board and our council on June 1st. That way there's not conflicting messages out there. All right, you survived the presentation. Give us your feedback, your thoughts. Again, this is new territory for all of us.
Ben, I didn't hear anything about libraries.
Sam, that's a great question. So the libraries is a different department, but they have today, I'm not the expert, but the libraries have services they've slowly unwind. They're doing curbside checkout today and book drop off. They have a great, if you have never used it, I'll be a big poster child for it. They have a great digital access to so many different things, from movies to music to books. If you haven't dabbled in the digital experience with the library, I suggest you go on to their website, and it's a little tutorial on that. But they will slowly open as well, but I have to defer to them to release that information.
Thank you.
I would say that June 1st meeting, you'll hear a lot about city services if you have the time to participate in that workshop.
Okay.
Any other questions for Ben? Ben, thank you. And I also wanted to, I know every board member read your report about going up 4 spaces nationally, which I think is tremendous. And you might want to say something regarding that.
Yeah, it's all of our work and accomplishments when we get those nice awards that our department gets to see. So the Trust for Public Lands, after the last 2 years, and this is old hat for you, but in case there are one listener and maybe if this gets picked up after the recording, these are all recorded and played back for folks that can't participate right now. I would tell you that for a few years before last year, we tried to get in this list of the top 100 largest cities, and we're just outside 102, 103, 104, depending on the year. But we found out, and this is a credit to Richard Brown, he found out that there was a handful of larger cities that just didn't want to participate because of the intensive staff work that it takes to submit the documentation they require to audit your park system. But over the last year and this year, we've jumped to 34th from 39th, and it's quite impressive if you ask me. I mean, I'm very biased, but the fact that we have a park system that can beat out Los Angeles, Las Vegas, Austin, all high-performing cities is amazing. It
Yes,
happens
it is.
because of good board leadership and good staff and council members that support the budget. It happens because we add new spaces like Weeks Middle School. It happens because you add amenities. It's a lot of different things coming together with all the right people in the middle.
Your response to the COVID crisis is a perfect example of why our ratings have gone up. So it's really extraordinary, the adjustments you've had to make, and our hats are off to you. Thank you, and your team too. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. As you know, there's an amazing team behind the scenes here, and a lot of extra hours over the last few weeks. It's like I'm sure I'll do it in your private and personal lives too. It comes down to, like I keep saying, two things: staff safety and patron safety. If we can do that, we'll try anything. But I would say just know that what you saw tonight doesn't mean that we won't either wind something back down if we see the negative use like we saw at Gray's Lake, and it doesn't mean that if it doesn't go the opposite way, we can open some more things.
As we come to closure, is there anyone from the public that has this, would ask a question or has a concern? Anyone watching from the public arena? All right, seeing none, I don't think that we have any committee reports on the urban, citizen golf, cemetery, or trails and greenways. Anyone have a... Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I think that was just feedback, George.
Okay, all right.
No report from trails.
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't, no one's been meeting, have they? I will say this, our next meeting with Park and Rec, the executive committee, and remember, you're all welcome, and that would be June the 10th at 7:30, and I'm sure, June the 10th, I'm sure that'll be a Zoom meeting. And won't that, Ben, more than likely be a Zoom meeting?
Yes.
Yeah, that'll be a Zoom meeting on the 10th, so it'll be 7:30 from the comfort of your own home. I'd love to have everyone attend. Any other comments that we need to make?
I will leave you with a little tease, but we have some really exciting news you're going to hear on Thursday, hopefully. There'll be a big press release on another great accomplishment of the department, I'll say. National.
On Thursday?
A national accomplishment on Thursday.
Okay, all right.
Hey, Ben, is there any thought about the subcommittees having Zoom meetings?
Yes. We're talking internally. I've told the team that to reach out to their chairs starting as early as maybe this week. We wanted to get through Memorial Day to see if, and then to start having those meetings remotely. But I told them only when they really need something to be moved to this board. If there's not enough to bring them together, let's not do that at this point unless we really need to.
Okay.
Oh, is there anything else that we need to discuss? Well, I thank everyone for attending, and it was a very informative meeting. Go ahead.
I'll move the adjournment then, George.
Okay. Second? Was there a second?
Second?
I second.
I think.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Now closed. Thank you very much, folks. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.